Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. This is a group that is bound by not creed, but by covenant. Okay, see, I'm just giving you a test this morning. We hear these things every week. I think, why they know that? Okay, I'm Barb Martin, and my pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm a member of the celebrant team. Our church is located on lands that are traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa and Sac and Fox peoples. And as we enter this space, let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing. If you have children with you, okay, feel free to keep them with you. Or if you'd like, there's a petite play place back there that they may also play. And today we have infant and toddler care downstairs. Please silence your cell phones. If you're on Zoom, keep muted. After the service, there will be a forum at 11 o'clock, and which we will have a conversation about today's service. So be taking notes. Okay. This summer, we're excited to hear from a number of our members as they share with us what it means for them to First Unitarian, whether they are Unitarian Universalists or perhaps something else. Change is constant, and in personal lives and around us and in our congregation. What anchors us, they explain this in their life experience, what anchors them and gives them hope and courage for the next step in this congregation. Our presenters today are Gwen and Ysandril Morrigan, and they're members of our CUPS chapter, standing for Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans. They've been together since 2019 and have a passion for LGBTQ plus issues, both married trans feminine persons and people who are aware of systematic issues. To those ends, Gwen does lectures at local community colleges about LGBTQ plus issues, and Lisa is involved in grassroots activism and peer support. Gwen is a UAW factory employed by John Deere Des Moines work. She enjoys riding and getting lost in the woods. Isa, a licensed marriage therapist, plying their trade through their small business. They are avid gamers, role-playing games especially, and love sci-fi and fantasy stories. A nerd she is, okay. Now, in preparation for the chalice lighting, we ask all of you to take a few moments, simply breathe, and center yourselves both inside and in your relation with the earth.
Our chalice lighting is an excerpt from The Charge of the Goddess, as adapted by Doreen Valiente and Starhawk. Hear the words of the star goddess, the dust of whose feet are the hosts of heaven, whose body encircles the universe. I, who am the beauty of the green earth, and the white moon among the stars, and the mysteries of the waters, I call upon your soul to arise and come unto me, for I am the soul of nature that gives life to the universe. From me all things proceed, and unto me they must return. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals.
The last page is the music and words. We'd like you to sing along with this chant.
Chants are a little bit different from hymns. They're a lot shorter and repeated more times. We encourage you to harmonize at will.
But I'll stay with the melody in case you don't want to.
We'll try to make it clear when we're coming to a close. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit.
And now we have some leadership from our pastoral care. It says Barb Glass today, but we have Jim Carty as a surprise for you.
Take a moment to fully settle into your seat. Let your breathing soften. As you are comfortable, let your eyes gently close. From this place of stillness, let us enter into a time of meditation, reflection, or prayer. A church is not a building, but a community. As a community of human hands and human hearts, we come together to share our laughter and our tears, and to bear witness and to minister to one another as we struggle with life's sorrows and celebrate life's joys. A memorial service for Florence Freddy will be held here on Saturday, July 8th at 11 a.m. Barb Martin will enter her 9th decade starting this Wednesday. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and hearts support, aid, and comfort all those who hunger or thirst for food or water, justice or freedom. May we never look away when we are needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. May those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared out loud, one for those sharing in writing, and one for those held silently among us.
The mission of First Unitarian Church is to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically. Your gifts of time and presence and money make all of this possible. The offering is a budget line item. I mean, it's also a symbol of gratitude for this community and a symbol of the generosity that defines it. Every week, half of this collection is given to the service directly to the wider community. And to support our Faith in Action partners. Let's Talk, which are collaborators with the Des Moines Public Schools to help young children resolve conflict, and Hawthorne Hill, which works with unhoused families toward permanent affordable housing. And that will be the last week for those 2. We'll have the new ones next week. You may give through the plate that's being passed or at home online. Thank you. Our first reading from Yvonne Alboro. For pagans, the whole year is a cycle, and the movements of the earth around the sun and the resulting changes in temperature and day length and vegetation, in short, the seasons, are a core part of pagan festivals. I think the work of spirituality is to relax, to find the inner stillness and space that is already there. All we have to do is to remember who we really are, to reconnect with the ebb and flow of the cycles of life. Everything is cyclical, the seasons, the tides, the orbits of the planets, so why not human life? But it's not just a ceaseless round of the same old things repeated ad nauseum. Everything changes. Everything is always becoming something else. Nothing is ever lost. My favorite times of the year are the transitional seasons of spring and autumn, where everything is changing rapidly. In spring, there are new blossoms and new leaves emerging, and the days lengthen rapidly. In autumn, the leaves turn red and yellow and gold and are blown away in the wind. The smell of bonfires is in the air and symbolizing the transformation of decay into the bright energy of fire. The gathering of life experience is like the laying down of compost. The leaves of individual events fall into the heap, fade and decay, and are transformed into memories, which feed our sense of identity, which give rise to new experiences. Change is constant in life. It is the one thing that we can rely on. Some people find it difficult to embrace change, others enjoy it. But without change, there would be no growth, no seasons, no new life. There would also be no death. But just try to imagine what immortality would be like. A barren state of existence with no excitement.
This will be sung as a round. We'll sing it in unison once, and then as a round once, and then end up in unison. The river is flowing, flowing and growing. The river is flowing down to the sea. Mother, carry me, a child I will always be. Mother, carry me down
Our second reading is from Queering Your Craft by Cassandra Snow. On June 28th, 1969, queer people gathered in secret or mob-run bars got tired of police shakeups and brutality and decided to fight back, beginning 3 nights of riots that we continue to honor today with Pride festivals, where we celebrate the fight for LGBTQIA2SP+ rights, or I call it Rainbow. These protests, known as the Stonewall Riots, were led largely by trans women of color, like Marsha P. Johnson, Miss Major, and Sylvia Rivera. They were supported by their community, with droves of queer people coming out over the next several days and nights to riot against the police and, by default, the laws that protected the police and outlawed any queer behavior. The next year, the first Pride Parade was held in honor and memoriam of this event. Pride festivals today have a lot of the markings of some of the pagan seasonal festivals described earlier in this chapter, such as food and drink aplenty, public affection and sexual activity, and a general feeling of celebration and festivity. This is a huge accomplishment given the pain and heartache that Pride festivals come from. Pride started as a riot, it's what we say very often, that now centers around peaceful protests like being who we are, loudly and apologetically in the public sphere. There are still protests at a lot of prides, and there are still queer art like drag happening and right around outside of these festivals. Ours was June 9th. There are free goodies and celebrations galore for entire weekends, often even longer. Still, I understand the complaint that we've fallen so very far from our roots, where trans women of color were fighting against police brutality that was meant to shame and literally harm them for being their true selves. While I think pride is deeply spiritual feelings, rooted, it is, if you your own queer way. Haha. All right. I don't like podium. Rather, you go ahead and just see me. So good morning. Sermon says there are 2 of us, so we're married, we do things together. So you get first, then you get her. My name is Ysandril Morrigan, or she, they, and I am to the gender spectrum as Juxera. Latin word, it means new and near to a lady. I am with being called a girl, but not a woman. I'm comfortable with being all that is with a little spice of everything that is. Like the rainbow, there isn't just one aspect of anything I fixate on. But in the end, I tell people that I'm Isa. Just Isa, that's all. You don't have to worry about anything. When we speak of pagans and pride, it's a combination of things. Combining the month of June's pride with that's what June is, it's pride, it's ours. And with my community alongside being pagan. But I actually don't really like the word pagan. There are those in my belief realm that have reclaimed it, much like other different communities and marginalized communities have claimed certain words. Because it was often used by early Christians as a targeting word for persecution. But as ignorance was commonplace then, it still can be now. Pagan simply means something very, very simple. It means you don't follow Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. That's it. You can be Hindu, Buddhist, Wiccan, Witchy, whatever. Follow many gods, whatever. It just means you're not those 3, really. And I don't need a word to tell me what my beliefs are. I was raised in rigid fundamentalist Christianity, abused by it, and freed myself in my younger years. I can use words, I can give you quotes, I can intellectually stimulate you with why other people validate what I think or do. That is, after all, what our hierarchication basically is. A bunch of people saying you're not full of crap, charge you 50 grand, and everyone smiles and nods. I played that game. I spent 2 years in information technology right out of high school, and then .com crashed. This was 1998 when I graduated. Yes, I'm getting old, sorry. Nope, I didn't want to do that. I then got a degree in psychology, and then when I graduated, they told me, oh, you're gonna make $12 an hour, and basically liberal arts psych degrees are toilet paper. So, no, didn't do that either. That was done, yeah. So, that was 2007. I wanted to say things with my beliefs, and I got a doctorate in metaphysics. Ooh. Then people were like, what are you gonna do with that? What can you actually do with that? What does it even mean? So after all that, I decided to be a massage therapist. In the midst of deciding what I wanted to do when I grew up late, I became a parent to my beautiful daughter, Bella. She's 10, went through a divorce, and then figured out why I couldn't grow up into the careers in life I wanted to. I wasn't me. I studied under a Wiccan high priestess for 3.5 years, joined groups, founded groups. That is, after all, what brought me to First Unitarian, the Cups group. But in 2016, I discovered I didn't fit into any criteria because I wasn't happy. I was an empty shell. Never full because my body was telling me something that I wasn't. In the transgender community, we often compare ourselves with the metamorphosis of the butterfly. Always feeling like the ugly caterpillar, fuzzy, crawls, leaves slime residue, yuck. Fuzzy, unkept, and stuck, and then I blossomed into my truest form. I became alive, excited, and driven to reconnect myself to what I believed and what I was becoming. So being here at this church allows me to have a safe space to experience that. After participating in the Transgender Inclusivity Workshop in April and May this year, I was embraced with what I already knew, but validated by the speakers in the videos that said, being transgender shapes unique spiritual gifts and abilities because we, as transgender people, are forced into rebirth. We are placed in a unique situation where we must go into very intense, introspective discernment of who and what we are. This discernment oftentimes follows us from an early age. In 1987, the word transgender was not available to me. This was before internet and before technology really existed. At 7 years old, my family was trying to figure out if I was gay, and I endured conversion therapy to help them make sure of it. Yeah, no fun. That's where I start from here, is that this safe space where I can contribute comes from a place of service. In my beliefs, I have battled what to follow, what to be, what ritual to do for this or that. In pagan rituals, I often have found that I'm more comfortable when the moon is new. That means that you can't see it. So that means there's no substance. It means I can do whatever I want to do, versus when it's full, it has a structure. Because there is no form, no restriction in the new moon, you can do whatever you want and wish for whatever you want. That is actually a very integral part of what we do in ritual, is we get to wish for whatever we want and make our wish come true. But at the core of what I was trained in, taught and studied, educated and followed is this. Only I am responsible for what happens to me. There is no creed, no God, no divine force that I can blame if something amiss happens to me. Next, because I don't live in a cave or underground hidden castle somewhere. Yes, I'm sorry, this princess is in another castle. If you laughed, I love you, you're a nerd, thank you. Therefore, since I decide sometimes begrudgingly to exist in the real world with other people, I accept that I must compensate and adjust to other humans around me. It's just meh. While I'd love to be flying around, no, not on a broomstick. However, Back to the Future lied to me, lied. Flying cars are now a decade late. So to me, in the totality of my experiences, the world is measured in vibration. We already know vibration exists. We can prove it, right? A car hums, bass thumps, radios have waves, signals are transmitted, cell phones have carrier towers. We are surrounded each and every day by vibration. The musical ones in this room, the chants, you know certain notes have a certain frequency. C's, D's, they all have different frequencies. Therefore, they vibrate a certain way. You sing, everyone who's sung in the chant. You experience being pulled up because your vocal cords resonate and you hear other people around you create similar sounds. So we have proven just now that frequency and vibration exists. This isn't a pagan belief. This is science. So science has experiments, a hypothesis, a process. Energy exists in every single one of us, you and me included. Belief without application, to me, is hocus pocus. What do your beliefs do for you? How do they apply to your life? They have to apply to me or they don't work. My first mentor, my high priestess from Virginia, her name's Millie Knox. Millie and I were having a discussion about something that was bothering me at work at the time. And I had made a stupid decision, surprise, and it blew up in my face and got me in trouble. She proceeded to ask me a simple, very simple question. She said to me, so that didn't work out for you, did it? Of course, I was pissed off at the time and sitting there like, well, Avi. And said, so you don't know like how you're feeling about this? You know, you don't like the feelings that you're going through? Yes, obviously. Then don't do it. Huh? Just don't do it. Don't do it ever again. If it didn't work for you, why are you going to keep doing the same thing? So later in life, I have adapted something very simple and universal. You can take this, steal it, I don't care. Ask yourself a question. If you do not have a toddler jumping up and down saying yes, 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 yes to the answer to this question, the answer is no. That's it. Simple. If it's not a yes like that, then it's a no. It could be a maybe. If you want to pause it and say maybe, that's fine. But generally speaking, the answer is no. It means you're not ready for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But having things where, yeses in your life should give you joy, give you excitement, give you connection to whatever you're doing. You want the yes. And if it's not a yes, it's a no, and then you move on. It just means it's not meant for you. That's all. So let me jump here, next page. Yes, I have another page, sorry. This is why everyone feels things differently. When you feel, that's a vibration. When you're sad, you're heavy, you're depressed, upset, you feel like you're weighted down, right? That's a low vibration. It's not fun. When you feel out of control, like those of you who are insane and like those centrifugal force rides at the amusement park, when they go ahead and spin you round and round and drop the floor out from under you, no thank you, I'll puke. But for those of you who enjoy that type of anxiety, that is anxiety. That is high vibration. And some of us like the floor being dropped out from under us. This is their thrill. And some of us cannot stand to be driving slow behind the semi on 235 and wondering when we can go around them and do something else. Yes, I see you. Different experiences shape that vibrations feel good or they don't feel good. And each one of us can say that some time ago, we enjoyed the roller coasters and the zappy rides. Now I get dizzy going on the friggin' swings. So beliefs like to sometimes get us stuck. Is there a God? Is there this? Why would this or that want a relationship with me? I skip to the most important one for me anyway. Why am I here? Why do I exist? This can answer the ones that have the God one in them. This question answers everything at once very simply. I exist to have a soul experience that teaches me lessons, and everyone else is doing the same thing. Before I turn it over to Gwen, my wifey, with this last thing, I'm going to ask everyone to have a pondering thought. If there is one thing in your life, just one, that is repeating to you, it is a theme, what is that for you? What is that one thing that keeps coming up? What is that pain that comes back? What is that life experience? What is your trip up? Betrayal, deception, loss. We call that your core wound. And it is your greatest teacher. And it is also how you can impact and contribute most. As part of the summer service series, we get this question thing, we're supposed to follow this thing and answer these questions. I was asked, where do I see the church in years to come? I hope through my contribution and your contribution, we connect with one another in this interdependent web of life through authentic and shared experiences that allow us to simply be. Like me, just Isa. That's it. I honor the place in you where the divine expression resides. When we stand together in that energy, that vibration, we are one. Namaste. Your turn.
Testing. For the sound guys back there who aren't used to someone standing here that's kind of towering over the podium like the principal building. Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Gwen Hope, and thank you all for joining us today. This is both the summer solstice service, or at least adjacent, considering technically the solstice was a couple days ago, and it's also the final week of Pride Month. As a queer trans woman and a pagan, both observances are very meaningful to me. My queerness, in particular my transness, are incredibly intertwined in my life. Now, a little bit just to touch on the solstice, a lot of the way a lot of pagans look at the solstice is both the coming to fruition of that which was planted in the spring, at least in terms of becoming bountiful life that's now growing, and kind of the surge of everything as all the sun's as all the sun's energy and water and everything else in nature kind of surges into all the plants and the animals. And then later, we now, at the crux of the year, are starting on that downward decline towards the full harvest and then the winter, which everyone here just absolutely loves, right? So when I first fell into the orbit of this church and community, it was because of Cubs. What allowed me to maintain this orbit was the ability to practice my pagan, beliefs with like-minded others. Pagan beliefs are in fact very compatible with Unitarian Universalism. Paganism, like UU beliefs, aren't monolithic and are in fact very far from it. What I am is known as an eclectic pagan, meaning I forge my own paths, beliefs, and practices, but the larger pagan community is varied. Many pagans feel a desire for their ancestral practices. As Christianity became the dominant religion in Europe, often spread by force of arms, a lot of practicing pagan cultures were converted, slaughtered, or sometimes both. Catholicism in those areas often incorporated some pagan iconography or practice just to try to make the conversion a little more palatable to those communities. Yet the living traditions, the oral traditions, were lost. Our understanding of these ancient practices and cultures survives frequently via accounts written by Christian monks who often saw these other cultures in their own heavily skewed subjectivity. In the modern age, those pagans who strive to reconstruct the faith of their forebears are known as Reconstructionists and often devote themselves to a specific pantheon. Like Norse and Germanic Reconstructionists will often venerate different cultural variations of Odin and Freya and Thor and Loki, and while Celtic Reconstructionists may venerate Cernunnos or Brigid or Danu or Rhiannon or the Morrigan. And Greco-Roman adherents may venerate Zeus or Hera or Athena or Poseidon or Artemis or Hecate, yet others combine these deities together. Many have heard the term Wiccan or Wicca. Wicca, like UU beliefs, is a syncretic faith. Means it incorporates aspects of many other belief systems together. Wiccan sects and liturgies vary heavily. While some are kind of duotheistic, focusing on a preeminent goddess representing basically the whole of life and nature, and the god representing strength, power, material goods, and wildness, and kind of like a chaotic energy that kind of helps set everything in initiation. Some sects devote themselves to only one of those, and some don't even recognize the other half. This morning's chalice lighting was an excerpt taken from the Charge of the Goddess, which has become one of the very few near universal texts in Wicca. The opening line of the goddess of the charge is very explicit in how syncretic it defines the goddess. It says, "Listen to the words of the great mother, who of old was called Artemis, Astarte, Diana, Melusine, Aphrodite, Cerdwin, Dana, Arianrod, Isis, Bride, and many other names." And this perspective heavily influenced the development of modern pagan beliefs. One of the most poignant lines of the charge as a queer person is as radical as it is simple. "For behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals." This line spells out so succinctly and powerfully a different form of divine worship, of veneration, of sacred action. Not only does it speak to interpersonal love between people, but it also speaks to self-love, and it does so inclusively. This is very different from the beliefs a lot of us were raised with out here in the Bible Belt. In many ways, those beliefs many of us were taught, that I was taught, were ones ultimately of self-hatred. Growing up, I struggled with, and I still struggle with, poor self-esteem. While I was mostly a straight A student, I excelled on paper and bombed everything else. To this day, I still feel compelled to interject random facts into conversations as I felt growing up, because the only thing I had to offer was intellect, and no one else saw anything else worth befriending. My parents taught me the only things that mattered were doing well in school and Jesus. There were few places of true solace and connection I had. Nature was one of those places, which is ironic for a redhead whose skin cannot tan and only burns, wanting to go out and get lost in the woods. And that is why the SPF 50 was invented. This deep spiritual connection to nature was something I always felt, but I didn't consciously understand what I was connecting with spiritually until my late teens. This connection is what drew my functionally agnostic atheist post-Christian self to paganism, where I felt a place to connect with what gave me joy and connection. Yet something else was burgeoning inside me that pushed its way through a lifetime of self-hatred and misunderstood feelings and subconscious behaviors that became oh so very clear in my late teens, which would be my feminine gender. So returning to when I first fell into the orbit of this church and this community, I was both a fledgling pagan and a fledgling woman. Enjoined in the sense that I had only been a young adult for a short time and nearing the beginning of my transition into the woman that you see here before you. This juxtaposition of belief and identity was now being consciously developing and co-evolving for the first time in my life. However, my initial orbit was high and brief. While my paganism allowed me to honor and venerate my femininity and my inner goddess, the community I found initially held exclusive parts to it, for which trans women weren't natural or welcome or true women. And for this reason, I fell out of orbit with this community for many years. It was only after rejoining of my then partner, now spouse, in 2019, which returned me to a closer orbit with this church. After summoning much courage, because we had both experienced some exclusion in the past, we returned to extremely active CUPS membership last year and have since led multiple rituals. My connection to nature, the honoring coexistence in this web of life, gives meaning to my life in a profound way. It has saved my life in some of the darkest places I've been. So it breaks my heart that greater society, and unfortunately, like some of the pagan traditions that have developed in that society, though they are more generally accepting of freedom for heterosexual intimacy and typically more feminist, were and are still steeped in queerphobia and gender essentialism. And this stings even more because we know that our ancestors, our pagan ancestors, historically weren't strictly cisgender heterosexuals either. Many cultures and societies accepted same-gender intimacy and attraction in various ways. Many cultures also had gender-variant folks that may be comparable to modern trans and non-binary identities, but we'll never truly know. How one of the oldest recorded stories we know, the Epic of Gilgamesh, is probably the queerest muscle jock bromance you'll ever read. So, to end my time here with a preface for our closing chant, this chant is probably the most popular in the Wiccan community and the pagan community that exists. It is sometimes called the pagan birthday song because of how ubiquitous it is. Despite how loved it is, many don't realize that the person who wrote it was also an infamous transphobe, a founder of a trans-exclusionary woman-only Wiccan tradition, which has been so explicit in the recent years that a lot of the people who followed in her path have actually been going heavily away from that in various covens across the US. And so today I want us to close by reclaiming it for our congregation and our community, to say that we all do come from the goddess, of whom most pagans mean nature as a feminine persona, meaning nature herself, life herself.
We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean. We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall
As we close out this service and have the lovely Barb come up here in a few seconds to do the extinguishing of the chalice, we, in this middle of the year, breathe deeply in that sometimes excessively humid summer air, and try to wade through it with a knife or a spoon or a shovel. And we look at the trees in full leaf. We look at the sky in its brilliant blue. We see everything growing, everything changing, everything surging forward to where it will be at the end of the year. We see the food that will become part of our bodies growing. And we see the children and the other people in our lives that have so much growth to do, also growing and transforming before our eyes. And at the same time, we see those who have passed on from us as they transform once again as they travel elsewhere. Go in peace. Thank you, Barb.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of this community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.